the Jayda InStitches show. Spring has finally sprung. And what better time than to make ourselves a brand new bucket hat to ease us into the warmer months ahead. We are going to make today's project using 24/7 cotton by Lion Brand yarns, and we'd like to thank Lion Brand for sponsoring today's video. We will leave a link to Lion Brand in the description box and the pinned comment down below, so if you need to restock your 24/7 cotton stash, you know where to go. We've made things on the show here with 24/7 cotton in the past. In fact, the project list is getting pretty long, and we'll link to that list in the description box as well. So if you want to make something to maybe match your new hat, you can do that too. 24/7 cotton is 100% cotton. It's mercerized, so it's very strong. It's got a nice little shine to it. It is very tightly wound. It comes in a whole bunch of really pretty colors, and it's become my favorite cotton to make wearables with. In fact, it's my favorite cotton to make a lot of different projects with. It's the nice cotton, you know what I mean? It's a size 4 yarn, so it's great for a whole ton of different projects, and that's probably why I wind up using it quite a lot. It makes great hats, let me say. Today's hat is also made using the very familiar and simple shell stitch with a little fan stitch thrown in for good measure. And I'm going to show you how to change colors so you can get this real fun sort of spring garden look like I've got here, or just make it all in a solid color. So if you've only got one ball of 24/7 cotton in the stash, you can make a whole hat out of it for kids or adults. And we are going to give you instructions today to make this hat for little children, big children, tweens, teens, adults, even big heads. And all of that is also included in our written pattern. You'll find the written pattern in our Etsy shop. And speaking of the Etsy shop, it's the Easter weekend, which means it's time for our shop's anniversary sale. So all this weekend, everything in our shop is also 20% off. So happy Easter, happy spring, big thanks to Lion Brand. Let's grab our hooks, we'll grab our 24/7 cotton yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we will stitch ourselves up a brand new bucket hat together. In order to make our bucket hats, we are using 24/7 cotton by Lion Brand. You need around 100 yards for an adult, 85 yards for a child hat. I'm going to be using a whole bunch of colors today. If you've got 24/7 cotton left over from previous projects, then this is a nice project to use some of those scraps in. But you can also just do it in a single color, and I'll explain how to do that as we go. You will want a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, a stitch marker. A measuring tape is very handy in case you need to check your gauge, and I do recommend that since this is a wearable. And let's talk hooks. If you're making this for a child, I recommend a 4 or 4.25 millimeter hook, also known as a G or a 6. For regular adult-sized head, that's me, that's what I'm making, a 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I, or a 9. And for an extra large head or a head with lots of hair, you might want to use a bigger hook, 6.5 millimeter, even 7 millimeter hook, also known as a K or a 10.5. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. We're going to take the first color and we're going to start with a slip knot on our hook. We're going to chain 5. The basis of this pattern is a multiple of 5. So chain 5 and join with a slip stitch to the first chain, and that will give us a ring. We are going to build all of our first row 1 into this ring. So here we go. Chain 3 to begin. That chain 3 counts as a double crochet. We're going to work 2 more double crochet into that ring. And because that chain 3 counts as a double crochet, that is our first shell. 3 double crochet equals 1 shell. We're going to chain 1. And then into this ring, we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1, 4 more times. So that's 3 double crochet, chain 1. Work 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 more times. And I will see you at the end of row 1. At the end of row 1, you should have something that looks like this. You'll have 5 shells or 15 double crochets, and you'll have 5 chain 1 spaces. Don't forget that last chain 1. You can join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that began the row. If you are changing colors like me, you can fasten off weave in your tails. If you are not changing colors, you are going to slip stitch into each of the next 2 stitches and then into the chain 1 space right there. So fasten off if you are changing colors, or slip stitch across to the next chain 1 space if you are not. We're going to take our next color now and make a slip knot on our hook. You can join your yarn in any chain 1 space, it doesn't really matter, but if you remember, if you didn't change colors, you slip stitched across and you're right here. So I'm just going to join my yarn with a slip stitch in that same space, and we can all chain 3 together. So chain 3 counts as double crochet. That's the first double crochet, 2 more double crochet into that space. That's the first shell complete. And before we leave this space, we are going to chain 1 and work 3 more double crochet into the same space. So 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, and chain 1. So that is a little increase into each space all the way around from row 1. We're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1. So we had 5 shells in row 1. At the end of row 2, we will have double that. We will have 10 shells. 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1 in each space all the way around. And I'll catch up with you back at the beginning. At the end of row 2, you'll have something in a pentagonal sort of shape. You'll have 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1 worked into each of those 5 spaces from the previous row. Don't forget your last chain 1. Join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. If you are not changing colors, feel free to slip stitch across and into the next chain 1 space there. And if you are changing colors, just fasten off. Take a moment to trim your yarn and weave in any tails, and let's catch up for row 3. We're all beginning row 3 in the middle of an increase from the previous row, so if you slip stitched across, you're right here. Otherwise, you can join your yarn with a slip stitch. We can all chain 3. That counts as the first double crochet, and we're going to work 3 more, or I should say 2 more double crochets into that space. Now, we do not want to continually have a pentagon shape going. We want to actually round things out as we work. So instead of doing the increase here in this little increase from the previous row, we're going to chain 1 and into the flat side, so the space between increases, this is where we're going to work the increase for row 3. So 3 double crochet, chain 1, and 3 double crochet into the same space. Chain 1. So that's the increase. Shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1, all into the same place. And then into the space between shells where we had the increase from the previous row, you're only going to work 1 shell, or 3 double crochet, chain 1. So your pattern increase all the way around is shell, chain 1 in the first stitch, and then shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1 in the space between increases from the previous row. Shell, chain 1, and then shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1. So we're going from a stitch count of 10 shells, or 30 double crochets in the previous row, to 15 shells, or 45 double crochets at the end of row 3. And we are increasing in an offset fashion, and this is going to round things out for us. So you can sort of see that here. There's a shell in an increase, and then in between increases from the previous row, shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1. Shell, shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1. Shell, shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1. Shell, and so on. All the way around, and I'll catch up with you at the end. At the end of row 3, don't forget that last chain 1, and you can join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that began the row. If you are changing colors, you can snip your yarn, fasten off. If you are not, you can slip stitch across those next 2 stitches and into the next chain 1 space. We're going to pause now and just measure, but before we do, I just want to double sort of reiterate the pattern that we just did. So we started with 1 shell, and then we worked shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1. So it's 2, 1, 2, 1 all the way around. You should have 15 shells or 45 double crochets and 15 chain 1 spaces in between. And you can see that it's rounding out now as opposed to looking hexagon, I should say pentagonal. It's now more round-like, and that's because we are offsetting where we put our increases. I'm going to fasten off, weave in my tail, and we're going to come back and measure. It's always good to take a moment and measure at the end of row 3. This will keep you on track. You're going to find the widest part. You should be, if you're using the 5.5mm hook and you are making it for an adult, at around 4.5 inches in diameter or 11.5 centimeters. If you're making it for children and you're using the smaller hook, you should be close to 4 inches or 10 centimeters in diameter. If you're using the largest hook for the largest adult size, you should be approaching 12 centimeters or 5 inches in diameter at its widest. So that's where we should all be, respective of the hat size we're making. If you are too big, you might want to take it out and try again with a smaller hook. If you are too small, you might want to take it out and try again with a larger hook. Or if you're slightly off and you think you might be a bit tight, switch to a larger hook now. You don't have to take anything out. If you're slightly off and you think you might be a bit loose, then switch to a smaller hook. Again, you don't have to take anything out. If you are making this hat for children under the age of 3, you are going to pause now. You are not making this next row along with us. You are just going to sit this row out, and then we will catch up with you again at the end of row 4. We will all move on to row 5 together. If you are not changing colors, you've slip stitched across to this space here. If you are changing colors, you can join your yarn with a slip stitch. We can all chain 3. That counts as the first double crochet, and we are going to work 2 more double crochet into that space. Now remember, we are increasing in an offset manner because we do not want to create a pentagonal shape. We want to keep a more circular shape for the top of our hat. We are also going to start making things a little bit smaller now. So into this same space, we are going to chain 1 and work 3 more double crochets. So this row begins with an increase in this space that we all either slip stitched into or joined our new yarn in. So shell, chain 1, shell. That is the beginning of the row. 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. Remembering that first double crochet is a chain 3. Okay, we are not chaining 1. We are instead moving into the next space, and we are going to work 3 double crochet, and that is it. So no chain 1s in between now, just 3 double crochet into the next space. Do not chain 1, find the next space, and work 3 double crochet into it. So we are not chaining 1 in between our freestanding shells. We're not chaining 1 as we leave a little increase, because we are now starting to make things a little bit smaller. We are going to start gradually turning this into a bit of a bowl or a bucket shape. So we've got shell, chain 1, shell, that's the increase, and then shell, shell. In the space before the increase from the previous row, this is where we do our increases. We work 3 double crochet, chain 1, and that is just because we are working an increase, and then 3 more double crochet in the same space. So the only chain 1s we are using in row 4 sit in the middle of the increase, or between the 2 shells. 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. That is an increase. We only do 5 of those. Then it's shell, shell. Shell, chain 1, shell, chain 1 in this space. Shell, shell. Shell, chain 1, shell, 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 chain 1, shell, 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 and that brings you back to the beginning. So you're only chaining 1 in the middle of an increase. There's only 5 of them, and there are 2 regular shells without chain 1 spaces in between. I'll let you work away at that. I'll catch up with you at the end and I'll just review. At the end of row 4, we have 20 shells. We only have 5 chain 1 spaces, because remember, you were only chaining 1 in between the shells where you were working an increase. Otherwise, you were not chaining 1. So you've got 20 shells, but only 5 actual chain 1 spaces, and that's mostly so that we could just sort of differentiate between those 2 shells. Otherwise, you still have sort of spaces in between those shells all the way around. So when you're done your last shell, do not chain 1. You're just going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. If you are changing colors, you can fasten off. If you are not, slip stitch into the next space in between shells up here. And if you're making this hat for a child under the age of 3, hello, welcome back. We are all going to continue row 5 and onwards together. We are all going to be starting here in this space between an increase from the previous row. So if you're joining a new color, you can join with a slip stitch. We'll all chain 3. That includes anybody who is making a hat for a child under the age of 3. Wherever you start, so if you've slip stitched across into the next space because you're not changing color, it doesn't matter where you are because now everything is the same going forward. So we are going to chain 3 to begin. We are going to work 2 more double crochet into the same space, and you are going to not chain 1 now. You are just going to work 3 double crochet into each space between shells all the way around. 3 double crochet in each space. So you'll still have 20 shells, but now you won't have any chain 1 spaces. So no more chain 1, just 3 double crochet into the space between shells all the way around. You may not find that your hat turns into a bowl just yet, because this might give you a little bit of ease. You might see that it's starting to turn into a bit of a bowl shape. Either option is fine. This has a bit of stretch to it, so don't worry. And as we continue more rows of the same, it will gradually turn itself into a bowl or a bucket. At the end of row 5, you can join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. You'll have 20 shells all the way around, unless you're making this for a child under the age of 3, in which case you'll have 15 shells all the way around. And for the next several rows, as we make the upper part of the crown, or the main crown of the hat, you will have the same stitch count, so the same number of shells going forward. Every single row, if you are not changing colors, when you join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3, just slip stitch across into the next space, chain 3, 2 double crochet, and continue. Shell, 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 shell. No chain 1s. If you are changing colors at the end of every row, or at the end of random rows, just fasten off when you join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. Join your new color in any chain 1, or I should say any space between shells. There's no chain 1s anymore. Any space you can join your yarn, chain 3, 2 double crochet, shell, 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 all the way around, joining each row with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. So no more chain 1s, nothing but shells. Every row will have the same shell count going forward, and you will start to see it turning itself into a bit of a bucket. I'm going to work a few rows now of just straight shell stitch, and I'll see you at the end of a few more colors. I've just completed row 14 of my hat. So let me break that down. That is 4 rows of increase, and then 10 rows of just straight shell stitch. I have 20 shells in each row all the way around. That's 1 shell per space. If you are making this for small children and you left off at row 3 for increasing and then jumped to the row 5 or the main crown build, you'll have 15 shells in each row all the way around. Here are the numbers. If you flatten your hat this far and you try to make row 1 exactly flat and you flatten it, you're going to measure from the top edge to the bottom edge. For small children, you're looking for 12.5 to 15 centimeters or 5 to 6 inches. So I recommend a total row count of 11 rows and then measure. If you're over, take out a row. If you're under, add another row of just straight shell stitch. For tweens, teens, women, regular sort of smallish adult-sized heads, measure, you're looking for between 6 and 7 inches or 15 to 17.5 centimeters. Anywhere in there, or keep trying it on. If you're too short, add another row of shell stitch, measure again. If you're too deep, like it goes past your eyebrows, or it's just too far past the 6 to 7 inch mark, take out a row. If you need it to be deeper because you have a lot of hair or you're making it for a bigger head, then 7 to 8 inches or 17.5 to 20 centimeters, that's your measurement from the very tippy top to the bottom. Same thing, you're looking to do 16 rows in total. So 11 rows in total for small children. For most people, 14 rows in total. For an extra large hat, 16 rows in total. But this is entirely flexible in here. If you need it to be longer, you just continue to add the shell stitch pattern. Your shell stitch count doesn't change. If you need it to be a little bit shorter, then you just work as many rows of that straight shell stitch as you need to. And you're aiming for it to end or land on your eyebrow. That's where the hat should end before we get to the brim. When you're ready to put the brim on your hat, you're going to get to the next space exactly as you would any other row. So if you're changing colors, you're going to join with a slip stitch in a space, and if you're not changing colors, you've just slip stitched across and into the next space. We're all going to chain 3. Chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and we're going to work 4 more double crochets into the same space. So whether you're making it for a small child or anybody, we are all going to work 4 more double crochet into the space after the chain 3. So you have a fan now of 5 double crochet in a space. In the next space, you're going to work 5 double crochets. You're going to work 5 double crochets in each space between shells all the way around. So you'll have what looks more like a fan now than a shell. 5 double crochets in each space. So altogether that will be 75 stitches if you're making it for a small child, 100 stitches if you're making it for anyone else. This is going to help make our brim curve outwards while maintaining that sort of separated stitch look. So 5 double crochet in each space all the way around. At the end of your row, just like every other row, you're going to join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. Slip stitch all the way across if you are not changing colors and into that next space. If you are changing colors, fasten off, weave in your tails as normal. For our second row along the brim, we are going to repeat what we just did in brim row number 1. So if you're changing colors, join with a slip stitch, chain 3. If you're not changing colors, you've slip stitched across into the next space, chain 3. We're all going to work 4 more double crochet into that same space, and we're going to repeat the previous row. We're going to work 5 double crochet into each space all the way around, so you'll still have 75 stitches if you're making it for a small child. You'll have 100 stitches if you're making it for anybody else, or if we want to call these 5 double crochet motifs a fan, you'll have 15 fans around row 1 for a small child, 20 fans around row 1 and row 2 for anybody else. So 5 double crochet in each space all the way around, exactly like the previous row. At the end of that second row for the brim, same thing, join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. So you've got the same number of fans now, or double crochet all the way around as you did at the end of brim row 1. If you are making this for a small child, you are going to pause. We'll catch up with you again in another row. For everyone else, we are going to repeat this row once more. So slip stitch across and into the space if you're not changing colors, or fasten off, change colors. You're going to repeat this last row once more. That's for tweens, teens, and adults. If you're making it for a small child, just pause. We'll catch up with you again in a moment. At the end of that row, join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. If you are changing colors, for your last row, fasten off. If you are not changing colors, you do not have to slip stitch across and into the next stitch. If you are changing colors, you're going to rejoin your yarn right here in the same place that you just fastened off. We are not using the spaces for the last row of this hat. If you did not change color, you're right here where you joined in the top of the chain 3. If you are changing color, you're going to join with a slip stitch in the same place, the top of the chain 3, right where you fastened off. We're all going to chain 1 and single crochet in the same place. So we are now switching to single crochet for this final row. You are going to single crochet in each stitch all the way around. You are not single crocheting into the spaces between these fan stitches, so you're only single crocheting into the stitches. That means you will still have 75 stitches at the end of this row if you're making it for small children. You will have 100 stitches at the end of this row, 100 stitches if you are making it for anyone else. So you are not single crocheting into the spaces, you are only single crocheting into the stitches. This finishing row will give it a nice trim little edge. It will give it a little bit of strength and stiffness so that your brim sort of sits out from your face. And it's just a nice, neat and tidy way to finish off a bucket hat. Finally, when you're finished, join with a slip stitch to the first single crochet you made and fasten off. Take a moment to weave in your tails. Be especially careful if you were changing colors often like me to make sure you got them all. And then try on your new bucket hat and maybe step outside in the sunshine. Pretty cute, right? I love that it's based on a shell stitch pattern of 5. So we sort of start with something that almost looks like a bit of a pentagon, and then it just slowly turns into a circle, and then all of a sudden you have a hat. Math. I love it. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed making this bucket hat along with us today. It's really cute, it's fun, it's nice and light. I love it in the 24/7 cotton. And a big thanks again to Lion Brand for sponsoring us here. And please don't forget to pop into our Etsy shop sometime this weekend if you want to poke around through all of the goodies that we have there. All patterns and all digital files are 20% off all weekend long. It's our shop's anniversary sale. And big thanks to everybody who's popped in already and made use of that. We hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. Happy spring, happy Easter, happy Passover, happy all the good things. Flowers are coming, the warm weather's back. This Canadian could not be happier. Have a great weekend, guys. We will see you again soon here on the Jayda InStitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have a great week. Bye, guys.
Hi, everybody. Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.